In this video, I want to clarify quickly a few things about the wrist and the subtalar joint, and specifically what we're talking about when we say pronation and supination. So this term is a little confusing. These terms are a little confusing because they can refer to motion at either the wrist or the subtalar joint, and they refer to pretty different things. So let's talk about the wrist first off. If you're standing in the anatomic position like this, and I know this person has their elbows flexed a little bit, so this is slightly off from the anatomic position, but that's okay. If we're talking about pronation at the wrist, what we mean is spinning the palms so they are backwards. So you could imagine spinning the wrist and forearm around so that the palms are facing backwards and that the thumb would be out like this, right? And so the back of the hand would be facing our perspective right here. That motion, this spinning right there, that is pronation of the wrist. And if you're in the anatomic position with your elbows straight, you could see how that would be like a rotation in the transverse plane. So again, imagining the elbows more straight here, but you could see how that spinning would be a rotation in this transverse plane. And supination about the wrist is just the opposite. That's spinning the other way. So if you have your palms facing backwards with your thumb in, and you spin your wrist and forearm around the other way, that's supination. So pretty straightforward. Again, of course, going to be in the same plane. Pretty straightforward at the wrist. Where things get a little confusing is at the subtalar joint. So you will quite often see figures like this that describe, and by the way, this is, in case you can't tell, this is a rear view of the right foot. You can kind of see the big toe over here and then the fifth metatarsal head over here. So we're looking at the right foot from the back. You will see figures like the one we're looking at right now that say pronation is like leaning inwards, so it's like the foot rolling to the inside. And then supination is the opposite of that, rolling the foot to the outside. Quite often, and I have this up here, synonyms are used interchangeably with these. For pronation is eversion, and supination is inversion. And you may remember from last time that this is the common way that people sprain their ankle. So in an inversion ankle sprain, that's how I remember this is, say you step on something right here, you roll your ankle like that. That's ankle inversion. Now, why is this confusing? Well, it's not only confusing because people sometimes use these terms interchangeably and sometimes don't. But what's confusing is that quite often, as in this figure and as in this figure up here, which I just pulled off the internet, these motions at the subtalar joint are presented as if they are in the frontal plane. But as I have mentioned a few times, and as you'll see in the problem set, the subtalar joint itself is actually not oriented in the frontal plane at all. It's kind of starts on the back side of the foot and comes out like here, and then it comes up maybe like this. And in case this isn't clear, it's medially deviated from this direction by about, I think, 22, 23 degrees. And it's also vertically deviated off the floor by about 45 degrees. So if you're confused, that's okay, because this is very confusing, and this is not something that you will necessarily see explained in great detail, even in some of the anatomical literature out there. So for our purposes, pronation, eversion, interchangeable, supination, inversion, interchangeable. When I am talking about this, I will really strive to use the terms inversion and eversion, and I will try to explicitly state that I mean that as a rotation about the subtalar joint. But just be aware that when you are looking at figures in anatomy textbooks and clinical literature and research, quite often people present these things as if they are a rotation in the frontal plane, even though technically speaking they are not. So I hope that clears up some of the confusion about the wrist, where we can have pronation and supination, and the subtalar joint of the ankle, where we can have pronation and supination. Same terms, they refer to very different motions. So I hope that was helpful, at least, in clearing up some, but likely not all, of that confusion.